On to our next subject, councilors. Item D, irrigation restrictions update. Director Johnson.
Stare at it. Did you do that with your mind?
I got a mouse. Okay, it's unfortunate we lost a lot of folks here, but we still have a few. So I am gonna give you, I mean, it's 5:30, but these folks sat here long enough. I'm gonna give you soup to nuts, what we've got from the reservoir to irrigation restrictions. I will be here as long as it takes for questions to be answered and people to feel like they were heard.
Sorry. She was just pointing out, are we supposed to be on repair and not up?
No, there was two agendas out. The one I got off the,
It was amended. It's no
Oh,
longer-
excuse me.
Yep.
Sorry.
a good sneak preview. All right. Again, kind of going back, there's some repetitiveness, but for you guys, but some folks may have not seen what we've had for the timeline of events. So January 18th, loss of the high reservoir. I will tell you a lot of questions as far as what is the cause. We did put out a press release about a month ago, maybe a little bit longer, that identified that there was what appears to be a communications loss. The reservoir was overtopping when our staff showed up at 4 a.m, which appears to undermine the earthen embankment, which caused enough of it to scour out, and the concrete wall tipped over and released somewhere between 3 and 4 million gallons of water. That triggered a boil order that is required by the state DEQ water regulations. Essentially, when that wall came down and part of the roof collapsed, the water system of the city of Lewiston was exposed to the environment. It was a challenge communicating what that meant, because from my perspective, that reservoir was built in the 1920s, and that reservoir was uncovered for the first 35 years of its life. And now we're going to tell people it's unsafe to drink the water. But that is the state requirement, that's the state law, so we had to put a boil order in. In those 8 days from the 18th to the 26th, essentially the city staff rolled out the plans and looked at how we could redistribute the water away from that reservoir, cut it off, and then still keep pressure within the system. One key component of what that reservoir did, when we lost 3 million gallons out of it, we still had 1 million gallons in the bottom of it, which kept pressure on the system. So the system never lost pressure. When you lose pressure in the water system, the water in a pipe is trying to get out. That's why when you turn your faucet on, it comes out. And so when you lose pressure, the pressure goes in the opposite direction. So that can introduce all kinds of different contaminants. The pipe, who has been maybe pressurized in that direction at that pressure for 100 years, is not used to the new force, and it collapses. And so there's all the benefit. The one good thing that did happen during all of this in January was we never lost pressure. We never collapsed any pipes. We transferred the system to distribute water differently from the way it's designed. And so essentially starting in January 27th, we came out and balancing the system. And so if you know Lewiston, we are sitting here basically at the base of Lewiston. Lewiston's water system is on a tiered system. So you have multiple water pressure zones. And so if you were to feed the reservoir all the way up at the golf course down to right here, you would have too much pressure and it'll blow the wall out. So you have to step that pressure down incrementally from the top to the bottom. And so we now had to feed the water differently from where it's at. These are called pressure reducing valves. We had to tie them into the new system. And so essentially the same thing that's happening today is we are feeding the water. It used to come from high reservoir going east to west through transmission lines that are 2 foot in diameter to feed it out to neighborhoods. Then it's distributed out into the local distribution network. Well, now that's off. So now we're feeding water from the south. And those lines, we're feeding it through neighborhoods. We're feeding it through 8-inch lines to get to the main street. And so that's why it is different from all of these other water conservation efforts that you hear. Typically, so Lloyd, when they have the irrigation restrictions, they do not have enough source water in Man Lake to provide everybody irrigation for that day. So they say, if you got an even number address, you're gonna water on this day. If an odd number address, you're gonna water on the other day. We have all the source water we can handle. We have multiple wells running, feeding that water. It's the distribution system that we can't get it to. So the heart of the system, at least for the high reservoir, is Normal Hill. So if everybody on Normal Hill just cranked on the water, our system could not provide water. We would just not have enough water through those smaller pipes to get to Normal Hill. And so that is why if we let half of the neighborhood or the other half go, at this point, I don't think it could provide it. We'll get into more details about the irrigation restrictions later, but I kind of got on a sidebar talking about the timeline of events. So February, essentially analyzing the system, trying to balance it out, because we didn't know how well that system would maintain. So we had our water crews running 24/7, going out there, tweaking the system, monitoring the system, you take hydrant pressures. And so we were taking new hydrant pressures to see, are we compliant with fire code? Are we losing pressures at different times of the day? What is this system operating like this? And tweaking it and finding different valves and opening up their other parts of the system. That took February. We're getting the technical analysis. Fortunately for the city, we had an engineering firm and a contractor building the water treatment plant on site at the time. So we are feeding them information, and they're running large models to tell you, okay, this is how you're going to tweak the system, and this is how it's going to run. So the first couple weeks are essentially just trying to get the system balanced. And we can walk and chew gum at the same time. Concurrently, the engineering firm, city staff, we're going in there and analyzing the system. As far as the reservoir, what do we got to do? That is 4.5 million gallons of water, kind of, as I said, feeding the heart of the city system right there at Normal Hill. We need to find a way we can't move that reservoir. All the pipes, as I've already said, are feeding off from that other area. So to put a reservoir somewhere else in the system essentially wouldn't do us any good. So we start looking at it. What's dictating the replacement of this reservoir is materials. There is not enough time to, case in point would be, we have a 1.7 million gallon tank, reservoir, steel tank, that's up by the high school. That one started in 2019. 4 years later, we still don't have the reservoir online. To design it, to get a contractor to bid it and give you a price, then manufacture it and build it, or manufacture the materials, then get them here to build it. It takes an immense amount of time. And so we hit, I'm thinking beginning of February, we were already calling out what materials, whether it was preformed concrete, modu tanks that are temporary tanks that are basically a temporary fix, replacing the reservoir or fixing the reservoir we got, looking into liners, steel tanks, all these different tanks. And really the big, larger volume fixes are too many months out. I think some of the early returns where we can get you something in there in November. So those were kind of off the table from the beginning. So then we're looking at repair of the tank or repair of the reservoir or the modu tank. And so we were looking into, what does this reservoir look like? As you all are aware, it's a 100-year reservoir. I think it was 2024, so not quite 100 years. It's got a giant hole on the side. It's got a roof that was built in the 50s, or at least the wood frame was built in the 50s. It had a new roof built on it in somewhere in the 2000s. So trying to go through the levels of construction, having structural engineers having geotechnical engineers look at it, because we weren't sure, was this thing leaking? What does the ground look like around it? So we went out there and did ground penetrating radar, and there was no leaks. This was an isolated, it appears to be tied to one event. There was no leaks coming out of this reservoir before. The staff was not aware of any issues we talked about deferred maintenance. All inspection reports, this is 100 years old. It's time to start thinking about replacement, but there were no red lights as far as this thing is failing or this thing is failing or thing is failing. So none of that was identified. And then March, we started realizing our opportunities are basically a temporary water holding system or repair of the existing reservoir. I think it was March, we approved a $300,000 temporary or small bit of demo to go in there and pull out, because the glue lamp beams were hanging down there, to clear out the deck so we could bring in engineers to look at it, evaluate what's going in there. And so that was done. We had a couple cranes out there for a week pulling all the things apart, went in there, and that's where more bad news on top of bad news is that the roofing material on top, it was fine serving its purpose, but it's 50, 60, 70 years old, dry rot and wear. It was gonna take more time that we didn't have to build a new roof on top of that. And so that we hit a roadblock, and that was 2 weeks ago of, sorry, option A is not viable. We have to move forward and find option B. So then we started leaning towards the Modu tank. The Modu tank, I'm not a fan of. It's I think it's 100,000 to 300,000 gallons of water. It's essentially building an outdoor pool that you can buy at Walmart. You build it, it's short, it's temporary, and it's just, it would get us through irrigation season, and it was on the same schedule as what we're on right now, and it's throwing money out the window. So, if we're gonna be pushing irrigation restrictions into July, why would we put something up temporary that's not gonna last for more than a year or two? So, moving into essentially May, I'll get into the details of it. The current plan is to take the roof off, get rid of the entire roof, line the existing reservoir. Everything, as I've said, appears to be sound on the geotech analysis, and line it and fill it and put a floating lid on top of it, which is kind of a standard, I guess. Oil and gas uses these types of systems pretty regularly. So that is the effort that we've been up to date. I echo everyone else's frustration in the timing. Between the availability of just getting all of the information. I mean, when we're looking at solutions, we're at the mercy of the supply chain. I keep saying that regarding, steel manufacturing is very slow. Concrete, something of that size is an enormous undertaking, and getting it, designed, getting it approved for the DEQ, it has been nothing short of a major undertaking by city staff, the consulting engineers beyond Boise, Seattle, I'm not sure where all, helping us do this at all ends of the spectrum, trying to call in all our favors that we can. It's, like I said, with the tank up at the high school, that's a 4-year project, and so we're trying to get this one done in 6 months. It doesn't prevent. I understand people are upset. I'm frustrated. I'm tired. I'm angry. But there's just no way of getting 2 to 4 million gallons of water safely in that location expeditiously beyond 6 months. You've seen this slide. This is the general water consumption of the city. So this slide on the y-axis on the left-hand side, this is how many millions of gallons is consumed by the city on a daily basis. So we average in the winters somewhere between 2 and 3 million gallons. That's what we call base demand. And so when this failed in January, we were very fortunate that it was in January, because if it happened in August, we would be absolutely no irrigation whatsoever, because the system just can't maintain, peak demand. I think this was that really hot year 2 years ago. We peak at about 9 million gallons a day. So if you kind of do your high school math here, we're right around this 4 million gallons a day. This weekend was a really good test. I did not receive any calls, but my phone did not leave my side the entire time. I'll get into the details of what this weekend meant. I want to walk through this, and this is, I'm sorry, if this is, you can hush me along, but this is the water system that the city of Lewiston operates, and it's not spatially correct. It's more of, so we've got different pressure. We've got a low zone, a high zone, and a west system. And so somebody may ask, why does North Lewiston and downtown have no irrigation restrictions? The only tie between the low system and the high system is the water treatment clear well. So they're almost extensively two separate systems. They've got their own reservoir, they've got their own well, and a little trade secret here right now, we're trying to get that water plant running, and we have nowhere to, you can see the water from the treatment plant goes directly into High Reservoir. We have nowhere to put that water, and so that thing wants to hum, and we have nowhere to put the water. So I'm asking everybody, take an extra drink of water in downtown and North Lewiston so we have somewhere to put that water so we can test this new treatment plant. There's a certain level of irony that we need to clear the system so we have somewhere to put test water, but we're trying to restrict irrigation on all the rest of the system. So here's your reservoir. Essentially in this model, Normal Hill is right here. And so you are generally, what is feeding the Normal Hill right now is well 7. Well 7 is the brand new well that was approved with the SRF project and the bond 2-3 years ago. It can produce about 3 million gallons a day. So if you go back to this slide, with all of our other wells, you can kind of start seeing, and again, source water is not that important because it's the restriction of the small pipes, but when you consider how much water that well can produce and keep it going into the high system, that is our most valuable asset right now. Skipping ahead slightly, that well ran 18 of 24 hours this weekend on average. So that tells you, since we have no stored water, that well is at about 75% capacity right now. So that tells you how our system operates. But that doesn't, again, source water is not completely tied to the irrigation restrictions, because if everybody ran it at that same hour, it couldn't keep up with it. But that tells you, I mean, High Reservoir, or well 7 has its own reservoir, so we have capacity in the system, but it's feeding back into Normal Hill. There was questions regarding the Elks and everything kind of north of us. I will say we need to see how the system operates before we commit. This is what I will commit to. We will continue to analyze this system on a daily basis and come back with recommendations for the public. There may be some relaxations as we get into areas that are not directly impacting this part of the system, but that's to be determined. I don't want to overpromise something and say we're going to lift this and these neighborhoods are going to be unrestricted and then have to come back because something catastrophic happened and now we're into no irrigation whatsoever. And so that kind of shows you generally, this is kind of my Bible right now, trying to understand as we're trying to backfeed water into the system. It is an extremely, I will stand up here and tell you, it is the most complicated water system in the state of Idaho. It's because of the elevations, because of the source water, because of where the piping and the network runs. It's non-traditional. We've inherited it. It's a good system. We're investing in it. With well 7, other reservoirs, the improvements to the water treatment plant, we're getting there. We're making those improvements. It's gonna get better, I promise. But this reservoir came at the reservoir rupture happened at a terrible time, but it is getting better, I promise you that. Again, these are the zones, so this correlates to that other graph in the map, and so you can see this is the reservoir rupture. This purple zone, that is ground zero. That is where there is all the water source for this purple zone came out of this high reservoir, and so now we're backfeeding from these other zones going north to south instead of east to west. So every cup of water coming out from over here or over here is a cup that can't be distributed over here. So we're in this together. There's areas of influence as you get further down over here that I'm not quite clear what those impacts are. So far, the indication is good, but I will come back and I will commit that I will come back and keep everybody informed. If I can lessen the restrictions and save as much landscaping as I can, I will do it. I want to do it, but I can't promise it to you today. So the basics of what these restrictions are, again, we're limited by the delivery. The pipes are too small to get it where it needs to be. It's not the source. Alternating daily, yes.
Sorry, I just wanna make sure, so I'm understanding and kind of putting it in layman's terms. The pipes, you're saying, aren't big enough to supply all the water. What if you just did it? Is that blown pipes? Is that what we're looking at?
Yeah, I don't have enough water to give you. So when everybody turns it on and runs it, that's when the system goes dry. You know, the reservoir of 4.5 million gallons previously with the old plant in the August, we'd run that plant 20 hours a day and we'd go home for 4 hours and you could watch the tank kind of slowly drain and then we turn it back on, it would fill back up. We don't have that option now.
Thank you.
So yeah, the entire system is now feeding that normal hill, that high zone. Well 7, again, I already said that, 75 to 85% capacity this weekend. Don't want to get, that's not a magic number. Initially, when we started talking about the irrigation restrictions, we thought about, we'd give you the Smokey the Bear kind of thing of today's really bad, no irrigation, today's okay, but it's not, I can't tell you exactly. There's about 3 or 4 different areas where it's feeding in from one zone to the other. And if the draw from one neighborhood is greater than it had been previously, that's gonna be where it's gonna collapse. The city does not control irrigations, automated systems or any other people's water use. And so when they turn it on, it automatically takes it out of the system. And that kind of goes back to the question of automated sprinklers. So with the hand watering restrictions only, we can get out and say, turn it off. Something happened or there was too much demand, turn it off. If everybody has their sprinklers scheduled for Mondays and Wednesdays and Fridays, I can't get out fast enough. I can't get the irrigation companies to turn those off because they're all automated. And so if the system's overly taxed or depressurized and then all the other sprinklers just keep in series going off, that just makes the situation from bad to worse. Soaker hoses, drip lines, and even my personal system, my system at home has a drip system tied to the irrigation system. That's okay. Those are low flow. It's the sprayers when those sprayers turn on, essentially your entire water meter runs that zone. That's why there's multiple zones, is because you can't run all of your zones at the same time because that's too much water demand. So that's why, and I want to find a way to save all of these trees. I mean, the hierarchy of our needs are potable drinking water and fire suppression, number 1. Number 2 is delicate landscaping, trees, vegetation, whatever we can to try and preserve that. Right now, sod is a huge consumer of water, and I can't guarantee that we can provide enough water for everybody to keep those yards emerald green. It's just, that's the hierarchy that we have to deal with right now.
Councilor Lidke?
Okay, let's go back to your fix real quick, because I need to understand something. So, thank you for the longer term solution. Are we being held back on the availability of that due to our procurement and bid process?
No, when you declared the emergency, we do not have to go through the full procurement process.
We can't throw money at it to speed it up.
Money does not solve this right now. It is the availability of the goods and manufacturing of them.
Councilor Forsman?
I've had, obviously, the daycares, my son actually goes to Fingerprints, so that church that had that public comment. And as well as parents talk about like little splash pads or ways to keep the kids cool during the summer. Is that similar to a drip system, or is that gonna put is that kind of a no-go?
I don't see that as an issue, no. I mean, car washes. The major car washes in town run recycled water. So I have the top 25, 50 large water consumers. I've already reached out to them. There was not a car wash on that list, so I can pull them and see what they use, but it's not our top users. We've been reaching out to all of them. But going back to your splash pads, the slip and slides, the kiddie pools, that's not gonna have a major impact on the system.
Can we maybe put that on?
Yep.
So that the public knows that they're not gonna
Yeah,
be
yeah.
fined $300 for doing a splash pad out in their
Yeah.
yard.
Yeah, I wanna, as I've said, open it up as best I can. I've already met with LCSC in Harris Field, I've already met with, the school district, I've met with parks, and the golf course. Everybody is, I mean, those are the major users, and I'm hoping with them reducing their water by 95%, that will clear a lot, give us a lot more breathing room in the system, because just the amount of water those 5 users in themselves that will impact the system in itself. So I'm hoping that gives us enough breathing room. I was encouraged by this weekend, but well 7 is concerning. That at 80%, that's a lot of water. Well 6 was not as high. So that tells me that north side is kind of managing itself, or south side is managing itself. But I need more time. The weather's gonna come back to spring, so I'm hoping as we kind of slowly ramp our way through the temperatures and irrigation demands and just communicating to the public and the big users, we can kind of find that balance of keeping things alive.
Counselor Whitke.
In the beginning, when you showed us the map, the low wind, what did we call it? Low system? Okay, you said if they could take extra drinks of water, so they're not gonna be on restrictions, right? So
Correct.
say somebody on Snake River Avenue is not on restrictions. Could I, as a person on Snake River Avenue, say, run a little more water, fill up a water tank and work with entities like Harris Field or just even private citizens to say,
Yes, yeah.
these are workable solutions that through private citizen relationships could be something because this part and Lloyd, but within the
Yeah.
customer base, could those solutions be found?
What's unfortunate, yes. So in my conversation with LCSC last week, they are looking at collectively trying to, water trucks. Taking water from the low system, driving it up to LCSC and getting those areas that are in dire need of water. And and they were talking about kind of coming up with a co-op where maybe it's the school district, maybe it's the LCSC, maybe it's the golf course. If we can kind of pool the resources, we can keep a water truck running, till July and hit those spots. Now, the downer of it is, I mean, when you look at 9 million gallons, the tanker is gonna fill you maybe 4,000 gallons. It's not, you're not gonna solve all of your problems with that, but it will help get some of these desperately needed areas, you can really soak them with that truck.
At 4,000 gallons, it's 250 trucks to supply 1 million.
It's not Dunkirk.
But it could save us from total detriment.
Yeah, I mean, that was the encouraging part of the meetings I had last week, between the golf courses looking at an additive that golf courses use down in Arizona and Texas that makes the grass more drought tolerant. It costs money, but they don't have any water, so they're gonna use that. We talked LCSC doing the water truck. So there's some creative solutions out there that the community is starting to come up with. And, my availability is less, but I wanna talk to people. I'm meeting with people tomorrow to talk about people who sodded their houses last week. I can't in good faith tell them, cut it, it's gotta go. But I also there's no exemptions in the code. There's alternative watering schedules, and I want to work with everybody to do what we can. But, it's like Jennifer has that massive field. Jennifer Junior High's got that massive field. They've committed that's gonna have minimal irrigation and abide by the restrictions.
So with your updates, are you thinking that we could provide weekly updates to the public maybe of how you're evaluating the system?
I think so. I mean, it's a catch-22, and this is something we've looked at right now because right now there's some commercial businesses there. We have water guys going out there, will be going out there and just knocking on doors and say, hey, we need you to help us out. And they're the same people who are going to be operating the system. Then we have the water manager who's kind of trying to keep all this together. Plus, we're trying to get the reservoir back online. It's just, there's a bandwidth capability, and if I don't have any news, I don't have any news. But I mean, we have a PIO, and even if we don't have any news, we will say, system is maintaining as it was last week, no new updates or no new changes to the system. And the other component to it, which we've struggled with, is that if we start modifying it, whether it's more restrictive or less restrictive, it needs to be understandable. So, when we rolled this map out, we needed to make sure that if I click on the map and I click on or search for my address, I can know I'm in or out. And so if I'm saying, if your street has an M in it, and you, on Wednesdays, you have 2 hours of watering or something, I gotta make it digestible and understood, and I gotta be able to say, something happened, it's done. So, trying to find that, it's typically, in my job, it's there's a lot of cookbooks in engineering, I look it up, that's how we do it. This is uncharted territory because of it's not a source problem, it's a distribution problem.
Counselor Forsman?
To go back to a comment about if, things are dying and the fires, because now we have dry shrub everywhere and dry grass. Obviously that is a concern. As well though, as if we can kind of touch base a little bit, if we run out of water because we just don't do anything, and we still have fires, because fires happen even if people are keeping their grass green, what does that mean for the fire department if there's a big building fire or something happens for controls?
I can let Chief Michael Bus speak to that, but I mean, that's what, I don't have the water to sell you or provide into the system. And so we have to, as I said, the hierarchy of number one is keeping potable water in the system and having adequate fire flows to fight that. I can let Travis speak to if it does lose fire flows.
Yeah, Travis Michaelbus, Fire Chief. It's a great question. One of the things is, yes, if we have dried vegetation and it creates a fire outside that spreads to a building, if we have adequate fire flow in our hydrants, I can keep that fire to the building of origin. If I don't have adequate fire flow in the fire hydrants, then I take a whole different strategy of containing the fire to the block of origin to then the area or the zip code of origin. You want to talk about what we call an urban conflagration. If we don't have adequate fire flow and we get large fire, it's going to jump so fast that we're not going to lose a home. We're going to lose neighborhoods, and that is one of the things. So having the fire flow for me is the deal. I can fight a house fire. I don't want anyone to have a fire, but we can fight a house fire. We do have a plan in place to utilize our structure. That will allow us to only fight maybe 1 or 2 houses at the same time. Anything above that, we do not have adequate fire. So that's why this fire hydrant system is so important we don't lose, because if it is, go back, Great Chicago fires and all that where you lose communities, that is exactly it. It changes our whole philosophy because we can't get ahead of it. So that's my fear, is we keep the system as is. I live in this system, I'm gonna be impacted by it, I don't like it. But I also don't want an entire block or a community of our city to burn. And so that's one of the things we'll take very close eye on. We'll be as aggressive as we can.
Counselor Forsman?
I thank you for saying that. I just wanted to express that we are thinking about that and that this is the forefront of our brain is the safety of the neighborhood, fires happening. This is why it's being taken so seriously. And this is why kind of the scare to the people, and not that we wanted to do that, but that we do care about this and we're trying to do something about it. And it's already been discussed. We have been talking about this at prior council meetings. So this isn't just something that we've thrown at the citizens. Whether we could have done that differently, I don't know, but we have been discussing it. So I appreciate you detailing explaining what the worst case scenario, because sometimes we need to have that.
The only thing I want to add on that is it is May 1st, with rain in the forecast, cooler temperatures. Now is the time where we can, as the water purveyor and the citizens, we can start finding a balance. I know it's going to be a challenging summer. I don't see it being that doom and gloom where every grass is dead and we've got hot spots and it's, I know we can get through this. It's just, we have a limited resource of water. And if we can handle it responsibly and divvy it out how it is available in our priorities of need, I think we can get through it.
One last one.
Counselor Forsman.
Can we put anything out there to the citizens on ways that they can collect water for a later date as far as barrels?
Yeah, we had talked about, the water guys came to me this morning and said, Nez Perce County, they do a lot of mag chloride, which takes a lot of water, and so they fill up typically somewhere else. So we offered in North Lewiston for them to fill up at that hydrant like they would normally. And so the guys said, hey, why don't we could set up a water distribution place for, it wouldn't be for commercial use beyond, like the tanker trucks for mag chloride, but for residents who had, they were spraying or something, had a large volume, it's under consideration. We have the hydrants for it and we could set it up. It just have to be manned during a particular time. And again, taking somebody away from, running the system, we may not have the assets to do it, but we could consider it. I just don't know how utilized it would be.
Sorry, I went off the wrong, I was more thinking of home collection, so you collecting it from your gutters or to be able to.
Yeah, I mean, that goes back to our last topic of stormwater.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
rain barrels and those are things that, we, are part of a stormwater system that's managed, is utilizing that and using that for irrigation. It can be considered, but by June or July, those do dry up.
Okay.
I just have a little bit more to provide. So as going back to the questions, talking about the rehab for High Reservoir, final design is ready. I have a surprise for you. You guys have a special meeting coming up you don't know about yet, but I couldn't get the contract in my hands and meet the noticing requirements for this meeting, so we'll be doing a noticing for a special meeting at some point, hopefully Wednesday at noon, but that's not official. That's just, we need to get this contract underway, but we have the final, I guess it's not the final, but it is the final proposal to do what I already told you, which is lay a liner within the existing reservoir, remove the existing roof structure, knock it all down, repair the concrete and put in an updated overflow, and install the floating roof structure on top of that. In construction, it's called the critical path. The critical path item is that floating roof. I guess they might get tired of hearing me call them, I guess, of where's it at, when can we get it? That is the one, so that gives us, there'll be obviously a beehive of activity up there trying to get the site prepped. That's not the critical path item, it's the manufacturer of that. They've got to design it, manufacture it, and ship it, and get it here, and get it online. The phase 2 cost is $2.4 million. I will have a complete financial breakdown for you when I come back for that special meeting, but I think it came up last time, we have rainy day funds and reserves within our enterprise funds. And I said, we roughly, it depends on how we can move money from future projects to this, and we may have to.
Please save this for another discussion. This is not the topic we're on.
Okay. Complete in July. That's when the irrigation restrictions will end. That is at the mercy of the supply chain, the floating roof structure. We asked the consultant today, is that a conservative timeline? He said that's probably a realistic timeline. So we could hopefully trim some days, some weeks off of that, but at the mercy of the supply chain. So as I've said, I will be available for questions for the public, for the council, for anybody who wants to talk to me. I share their frustrations. I am sorry. I never in my life thought I would ever be in this situation. We are doing all that we can, and I know it's hard to be put in that situation as the public, and then have the city come and say, we need your help. but I know we do need their help to get through this, and I know it will get better. As I've said, we're investing in this infrastructure. We're starting to see all of the investments come online. It's just unfortunate that this event happened when it happened. So with that, I'm here for questions.
Thank you, Director. I think we have most of them answered. We're gonna go for a new record, I think, 4 hours here pretty soon, so for work session. But you didn't let us down or disappoint us at all.
Thank you.
So much.